Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. In an effort to stop the war between Israel and Hamas from spreading, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken headed back to the Middle East. Some of the names on the Jeffrey Epstein list have been made public by a judge in New York. We have the details. And federal Tory leader Pierre Poilievre blasted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, saying crime is raging out of control under Trudeau's watch in many cities, including those in B.C.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is headed back to the Middle East to try and ease rising fears the Israel-Hamas war could erupt into a broader conflict. Washington is worried about a recent rise in attacks in the Red Sea, Lebanon, Iran, and Iraq. Blinken's trip will take him to many countries, including Israel, Turkey, Qatar, the West Bank, and the United Arab Emirates.
He will discuss specific steps parties can take, including how they can use their influence with others in the region to avoid escalation. It is in no one's interest, not Israel's, not the region's, not the world's, for this conflict to spread beyond Gaza. One of the biggest dangers of this entire situation was that the conflict would spread and we would risk a region-wide conflagration. It's why it's been one of the major focuses of all of his trips and will continue to be a top priority.
Israel's ground invasion and bombardment to wipe out Hamas has pushed almost all Palestinians towards Gaza's southernmost city of Rafah. As the displaced population grows, life in the border city with Egypt becomes more desperate as so many struggle to find food and drinking water.
أنا أم ل6 بنات، فيمكن هذه الميزة كانت يمكن بحد ذاتها تشكل صعوبة إنه أنا أقدر أحصل على المونة أو التسوق أو حتى المية. عندي بنتي صغيرة في 7 سنين عمرها وحفيدتي عمرها 10 شهور. من حد ما تواجدنا في هذا المكان ومنهن ما بين قحة ما بين فلوزة ما بين إسهال الله يعزكم يعني.
A number of Israelis living in Kibbutz Yiftach, close to the Lebanese border, have been living in a hotel since the attack by the terrorist group Hamas back on October the 7th.
Like every day I was crying. I'm trying to think, like every time I feel like I don't have enough perspective to see the whole picture because I lived day by day, not even day by day, and hour by hour, because I don't know. Every morning I wake up and I'm not sure how things are going to go in the country with the war. And I feel like I have no control on life.
It's scary, I must say. And we need to be sure that we're safe in order to come and live here again in our homes. So this is our request from our government, from our army. Please make us safe.
You know, many people are wondering what will become of Gaza once Israel is successful in wiping out the terrorist group Hamas. Will we see a two-state solution? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that will never happen. The same question was posed to Dan Senior on TBN, who is a former foreign policy advisor under the George W. Bush administration.
Israel has demonstrated time and again its willingness to put forward very generous concessions to create a Palestinian state, including in 2000 when then Prime Minister Ehud Barak was not only willing to give the Palestinians their own state, but even give them East Jerusalem as their capital, which no Israeli prime minister had been willing to do at that point, which is to re-divide Jerusalem. And each time Israel has tried to create a Palestinian state, they've been returned with terrorist attacks. In the case of that offer was followed by 140 suicide bombings by Hamas. So it's not clear how you get to a two-state solution. I would support it in theory, in principle. But right now, you have the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, which, as every leader in the Arab world will tell you, is corrupt and incapable of running Gaza. That could change conceivably, but so far there's not encouraging evidence that they're capable. And in Gaza, you have Hamas until they're wiped out. And I think what Israel has learned is they cannot create a sovereign state on its southern border unless Israel is responsible for security around those borders.
Meanwhile, in Yemen, Christian converts like Selah risk arrest, beatings, and even death threats when they choose to follow Jesus. But despite these dangers, Selah is encouraging and discipling believers across the country.
My name is found on the radicals' wanted list. They have my picture. Sometimes they watch me going from place to place. Usually I'm bombarded by threats. But all this won't stop my ministry. The more I receive threats, the more I am eager to serve.
In Yemen, Christian converts like Salah risk arrest, beatings, and death threats when they choose to follow Jesus. Despite all this, Salah and his brother decided to start a house church for secret believers.
Fear dwells among the Christians in Yemen, for there are people that come to church with no intent of pursuing the faith, but instead spying and collecting information on us. We are very careful about the meetings. We gather in closed spaces to prevent outsiders from hearing us. We had new believers in need of training and baptizing. So my brothers and I sat down to take a decision. They eventually decided that I should not accompany them because I was known. I posed a bigger risk to them. When they finished the training, they decided to move to another location for baptizing. So they took a bus and started on the journey. They were texting me for a while, but after that, I lost contact with them.
Salah was terrified about what might have happened to his brother and friend. That evening, he received information that they had been captured and imprisoned.
Major storms and flooding are impacting various countries in Europe, including parts of Germany and the United Kingdom. In England, a number of residents have already been evacuated.
We're going to evacuate. The ground floor is no longer tenable. The sewage system doesn't work. It won't be long before the water's polluted as well. The power will go out. Damaged furniture, the fridge, the freezer in the back, the cooker, the washing machine, the tumble dryer, all the white goods in the kitchen gone.
A court in New York unsealed documents that contain a list of people associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Those named are not necessarily accused of wrongdoing, as some are making allegations or potential witnesses. The first 60 documents of around 250 have now been made public. The list reveals high-profile former friends of Epstein's, including Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Michael Jackson, and victims who have already spoken out publicly. A judge who made the call last month to release the information said she was doing so since much of it was already public knowledge. The documents include testimony from depositions made about sex trafficking young girls by Epstein and his co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Some of the documents that were released involved depositions that were given by Jeffrey Epstein's accusers, Jeffrey Epstein's victims. And they talked about mostly what had been reported on or rumored about people like Bill Clinton. These women were asked if they had ever been on a helicopter with Bill Clinton. They denied that. Much of the information that we've seen in this document release today is stuff that we've already known for the most part. Names like former President Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, even the mention of Michael Jackson came out through a lawyer several years ago. Today's release shed some new light on that. Nothing untoward happened with Michael Jackson, according to the witness who was testifying. But it is not the explosive release of documents that some people were anticipating.
Epstein, who allegedly committed suicide in a Manhattan jail, was found guilty of paying to have sex with an underage girl back in 2005. He also hung out with many of the world's rich and famous and faced allegations of human trafficking involving a number of underage girls. A Nevada judge was back to work following an attack by a defendant who flew over her desk as she was about to hand down her sentence. The man, 30-year-old Diabra Radin, flew through the air like Superman after learning that he was going to be sentenced to prison. It turns out the judge, Mary Kay Holtis, did sustain minor injuries as a result.
Mr. Redden attacked Judge Mary Kay Holtis. Judge Holtis was injured and received medical attention and has been released. She remains sore and stiff, but thankful it was not more severe. Her marshal was transported to the hospital, treated for a head injury, and released. His injuries are still being treated. His name is Shane Brandon. The law clerk, Michael Lasso, received medical attention and was released. He received hand abrasions. We commend the heroic acts of Judge Holthus' staff, law enforcement, and all others who subdued the defendant. This is a very unique situation that, as far as I know, has never happened before with somebody supermaning over a judicial bench. Since yesterday, we met with our security contractor to bring in additional security personnel to support courtroom coverage. He's going to be being charged with battery on a protected person resulting in substantial bodily harm, 2 other counts of battery on a protected person, and 1 count of simple battery.
South African Olympic sprinter Oscar Pistorius has been released from prison. The double amputee who became a global star while running on carbon fiber blades served 9 years for killing his girlfriend. He said it was an accident when he shot and killed Riva Steenkamp on Valentine's Day of 2013. He said he thought she was a serious and dangerous intruder.
Nobody's perfect, Rodman. He did make a mistake, he served, and then, I think it's high time now he comes back to the community. However, I hope he learned a lesson in there, because that's not a place to play, that side. I hope to see him one day back on the road, running again, and being one of my favorite, because he was my favorite, but I know he killed someone, but we don't know what was in his intentions.
Hundreds of community members gathered for a candlelight prayer vigil on Thursday evening at a park in Iowa, where students have been dropped off to reunite with their families following a shooting in which a 6th grader was killed and 5 others were wounded. The teenage shooter, who was a student at the school, then turned the gun on himself.
Sustain us, Almighty God, through your Holy Spirit. Our trust is in you. Show us your unfailing love. Rise up and provide strength as we face this unimaginable day together.
Send us love, send us hope, send us peace.
Wow. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says crime across Canada continues to increase under the watch of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Now, during a rally in British Columbia, he brought up how crime is simply getting out of hand in Kelowna.
Safety is now a thing of the past. After 8 years of Trudeau's catch and release policies, crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder rule our streets. We see it here. We see it in Kelowna, which now has the highest crime rate of any city in Canada. They have 10,000 crimes a year for every 100,000 people in Kelowna. That's 1 crime for every 10 people in Kelowna. We spent millions of dollars on this rail trail, a beautiful trail to go biking and jogging. And now it's a massive multi-kilometer tent city right in the middle of beautiful Kelowna. That is insane. But this is the natural consequence of Justin Trudeau and the NDP, who've unleashed this crime and chaos. Do you know in Vancouver, the same 40 offenders were arrested 6,000 times.
Meanwhile, here in Alberta, Lethbridge police are investigating after a pedestrian was hit by a vehicle and taken to hospital. They say the collision occurred in the area of 2A Avenue and 10th Street North on Thursday. The victim sustained serious injuries and was taken by EMS to hospital. The investigation into the collision continues. Around 22,000 square kilometers of land burned in Alberta in 2023. One expert called it a record-smashing year. Mike Flanagan, a professor of wildland fire at Thompson Rivers University in BC, says the previous record of area burned in our province was 13,000, set way back in 1981. Last year, Alberta saw a total of 1,088 wildfires between March and October. Alberta Wildfire called it just an average number. However, last year's total area burned was about 10 times greater than the 5-year average. Folks in Manitoba are being advised to be careful after the province warned of rising water levels along the Red River. The Department of Transportation says water levels will rise along the river north of Emerson due to a lot of precipitation south of the border. It says water levels are up by around 5 feet near Emerson, with a 3 to 5 foot rise as the river approaches Winnipeg. Officials say the rise in water levels may lift up ice and create open water conditions near the river shorelines. Cross-country skiing is a favorite pastime for many Canadians. It's kind of a fun way of getting out and enjoying all that nature has to offer during the snowy winter months. Greg Campbell is with the Cypress Nordic Ski Club, and he explains how he first fell in love with cross-country skiing.
I just loved it so much, and I think I was really looking for something that got me a little bit maybe closer to nature. The exhilaration of training and working hard, probably the long distance aspect to it, to just let your troubles fade away, or it'd be kind of like a runner's high.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Greg Campbell from the Cypress Nordic Ski Club and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our broadcast. As Christians, we're instructed in God's Word to share the good news of the gospel with others. But for many, this can be kind of an awkward conversation. Abe Block is a retired pastor here in Lethbridge, and he shares his thoughts on why we talk with others, and sometimes talking about our faith can be a little difficult.
I think one of the problems is that we don't know our Bible. We maybe attend church once a week, and that's the extent of our Bible study. I teach a Bible study every week, and I kind of give homework and reading for the people because this is an ongoing thing. I cannot expect to talk about farming if I know nothing about farming. I can't expect to be a teacher if I know nothing about how to relate and how to communicate and how to teach. And I think that's one of the big things we're not sure of what we know. But secondly, I don't think many of us as Christians are sure of what we believe.
Retired Pastor Abe Block will also give some tips on the do's and don'ts of evangelism. That's coming up in the second half of our program. Well, the mild temperatures and dry conditions are coming to an end fairly soon here in southwestern Alberta. It's going to look a lot and feel a lot more like winter. Full weather details are on deck. We had sunshine mixed with cloud today and right around the freezing mark for Lethbridge. Tonight it'll be mainly clear with a low near -2. Now tomorrow it should be partly cloudy with a high near 4 degrees. A cold front along with a low pressure system arrives on Sunday, bringing clouds and lots of snow and a temperature dropping to -12. Warming up quite a bit on Monday to -1. But the white stuff will return with a bang on Tuesday and the mercury dropping down to -3. But look at that temperature Wednesday and Thursday of next week. Ouch. More snow in the forecast, high of only -20 on Wednesday, even colder on Thursday with a daytime high of only -23. Now the average high for this time of year is -2 degrees and the average low is -14. The record high was 13 degrees set back in 2006 and the record low, a very cold -36 set way back in 1996. The sun rose this morning at 8:28 and set at 4:46. Let's see how the rest of the country is shaping up for Saturday now. Expect rain and a high near 8 degrees in Victoria, rain mixed with snow and a high of 6 for Vancouver. There's a good chance of flurries developing in Edmonton tomorrow with a high near -8. Light snow mixed with rain and a high of +1 for Calgary. There should be a mixture of sun and cloud and a high of -5 degrees in Regina tomorrow, mainly cloudy and -10 for Saskatoon. Lots of snow in the forecast and -8 degrees for Winnipeg on Saturday. In the central part of the country, expect flurries with rain and a high of +1 for Toronto. Mostly cloudy and -9 degrees for Ottawa, sunshine and -8 in Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, it'll be mainly sunny and -8 in Fredericton, partly sunny and -6 in Halifax. Just a few flurries and -7 is on tap for Charlottetown. And in St. John's, expect clouds with snow and a high of -6 degrees on Saturday. The Canadian economy only added 100 jobs in December. Economists are saying the weakening in the labor market could mean an interest rate cut in the second quarter this year. Stats Canada's Labour Force survey found that our country's unemployment rate held steady at 5.8%. The 100 jobs added were well off the expected gain of 15,000. That would have followed the 25,000 new jobs back in November. The leaders of some green charities in Canada have been taking home some pretty large compensation packages. Their workforces, meanwhile, have been paid far less. A new report by the Canadian Press identified 17 charities in the environment, conservation and animal protection sectors whose top executives drew annual compensation in the $200,000 to $250,000 range or higher for the past couple of years. The charity with the highest paid executives was Manitoba-based Ducks Unlimited Canada. Almost 59% of the 864 registered charities in the two sectors only have volunteers, and 14% have no employees earning more than $40,000 annually. SpaceX is facing allegations of unlawfully firing employees who were critical of CEO Elon Musk. A spokesperson for the U.S. National Labor Relations Board has filed a complaint that consolidates 8 unfair labor practice charges against SpaceX. The cases stem from the company's alleged actions following the circulation of the employee's open letter in June of 2022. Now, in addition to the firings, the complaint accuses SpaceX of interrogating other workers about the letter. The United Nations has issued a somber global economic forecast for this year. In it, the UN points to challenges including escalating conflicts, sluggish global trade, and higher interest rates. The flagship report also projects global economic growth will slow to 2.4% this year from 2.7% in 2023. Now, both are still under a 3% growth rate before the start of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 66 points on the day to finish at 20,937. The Dow was up 25 points to 37,466. The S&P 500 was up 8 on the day to 4697, and the Nasdaq was up 13 points to 14,524. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.72 to $73.91 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 8 cents to $2.90 US. Gold was up $1.89 to $2,045.54 US an ounce, and silver was up 19 cents to $23.20 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.98 per bushel, barley's at $6.81, canola's at $14.10, and corn is at $7.82 per bushel. Live cattle February contract was down 55 cents to $170.58. Feeder cattle were down $1.55 to $223.13. And lean hogs February contract was up 95 cents to $70. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 74.84 US. Recapping one of our top stories, some of the much anticipated Jeffrey Epstein list has been released. The first 60 documents of around 250 have now been made public. The list reveals high-profile former friends of Epstein's, including Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and Michael Jackson, along with victims who have already spoken publicly. Epstein, who allegedly committed suicide in jail in Manhattan, was found guilty of paying to have sex with an underage girl back in 2005. As he hung out with some of the world's rich and famous, he also faced allegations of human trafficking involving other young girls, all under the age of consent. Now, when you think of evangelism, who first comes to mind? Billy Graham, perhaps? Is it still prevalent in the 21st century? Retired preacher Abe Locke will give us his thoughts and will describe how God is still using evangelism in the world today. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of our local stories, visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca. Part of the Christian faith is an understanding that God has instructed his followers to share the gospel with others in order to evangelize. Many would argue, however, that it's easier said than done. Joining us today to discuss evangelism in the 21st century is Abe Locke, a retired pastor here in Lethbridge. Abe, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thank you very much. It's been a while.
Yeah. So why does it seem so difficult for many Christians to share their beliefs with others? Is it maybe our own insecurities?
Well, I have to think of what is the meaning of evangelism. First of all, you see, many of us are confused with the term evangelism, and that's why we don't evangelize. We have evangelists in the past, people like Billy Graham, Billy Sunday, the Cetera twins, and the list goes on and on, all the time. These are people that have been specifically called to do evangelism as a full-time thing. But what you're talking about is for us as individual believers to be a so-called evangelist, but we will never be the professional evangelists, and that scares us. And we say, well, I can't do it. These guys have it. They know how to do it. They know their Bible and all the rest of that stuff. And so you're right. We live in fear of sharing because we compare ourselves to these evangelists. God hasn't called us all to be that kind of an evangelist. He wants us to evangelize who we are, where we are, in our circumstances, within the group of people that we live. And I think that makes a big difference to how people respond to the term evangelism.
Now, do we tend to think that our neighbors and coworkers are probably not interested in knowing or hearing about Jesus and His saving grace?
I think we think about that a lot, and that means that we haven't developed a proper relationship with them. If we get a relationship with them on a very comfortable one-to-one basis, so we can begin to talk about anything, then we can also talk about Jesus and about what He means and about our belief system. I often think that we're concerned because we don't know the Bible well enough, and that's very true. But you know, I've discovered one of the things that is most effective in my life as an evangelist, or as somebody who is evangelizing, is the fact that if I share what God has done for me, it's very hard for people to argue with that. It's very hard for them to be put aside by that, because it's my experience. And when people share their experience, others tend to listen and pay attention.
So, Abe, what do you say to someone who thinks that they need to have all of the right answers before sharing about Jesus? Is it that we have to know our Bible, so all of the answers are right in there?
I think one of the problems is that we don't know our Bible. We maybe attend church once a week, and that's the extent of our Bible study. I teach a Bible study every week, and I kind of give homework and reading for the people, because this is an ongoing thing. I cannot expect to talk about farming if I know nothing about farming. I can't expect to be a teacher if I know nothing about how to relate and how to communicate and how to teach. And I think that's one of the big things. We're not sure of what we know. But secondly, I don't think many of us as Christians are sure of what we believe. I have said to my Bible study group, for example, you should work at getting up one sentence to explain your faith. For example, I go back to Paul. What did Paul say? Paul said, we preach Christ crucified, hung on the cross, died, rose again, and is at the right hand of the Father, interceding for us. You've got it in a nutshell. So learn a couple of thoughts like that you can approach a person with, and you'll feel much more secure, and they will know you believe what you're saying.
How about approaching a conversation with a stranger and planting a seed for Christ? How do you really approach that?
Well, I used to, when I was a teacher back then, I used to go golfing every once in a while. And I would go alone deliberately so that they would pair me up with 2 or 3 other people on the course in order to have a group out there. And I loved that, because as we got to go, we would just chatter, and I would eventually ask them what they did for a living and how they could be on the golf course in the middle of the day or whatever. And they would share with me, and invariably, they would feel the pressure to ask me what I did. And I would say, well, I'm a salesman. Oh, what in the world do you sell? And I said, well, I sell the good news, and I sell something that's very special to me. And then I would begin to tell them what the good news is. Would be a natural end for me just to discuss it with them. And sometimes they would simply say to me, I don't want to hear another word. And I would say, well, that's fine. But I just needed to tell you what my belief system is, because we all have one.
Now, what do you say to somebody who tells you, you know what, Abe, I really don't believe in sin?
Yeah, well, I would quote some scripture to them. That's one way. But secondly, I met up with people like this at the university. And I would say, okay, if you don't let me talk about the Bible, that's my basis. And so I'm sorry, we really don't have a baseline to communicate. I said, if you want me to listen to some of the things that you believe in, I'm prepared to do that. However, I expect you then also to respect my belief system so we can have a discussion.
You know, I once had a conversation with someone who didn't know Jesus, and this person said to me that she didn't believe that Jesus was the only way to our Heavenly Father. She says, you know what, as long as we're good people, God loves us all, we'll end up in heaven. But Abe, it even says right in the Bible, no one comes to the Father except through Christ.
That's right. I had a fellow that said to me, well, Mr. Block, I think as long as you're on the bus, you're okay. It doesn't matter which bus you take. And I said, well, would that be good for you to get on any bus if you want to go to California, but it's going up to the Yukon? Well, he said, no, that wouldn't work. And I said, well, it's the same way here. You got to get on the right bus to get to the right destination, or you won't get there.
What are some of the benefits of asking good questions in a conversation with a non-believer?
Very crucial. And I think for me, the key is to build a relationship. If you don't have a relationship, it's like coming in a fog. I mean, the fellow doesn't know where you're coming from, or the person. If you have a little bit of a relationship, at least already, you build up a trust factor. And as you build up a trust factor, they will feel badly if they shut you out. They will let you say a few things at least. And I think it's very crucial to build up a trust factor. I was chairman, for example, of the condo association that we are here. So one of the things I tried to do was let the people know, I love to fix things. If you need help, call me. And that was the beginning of relationships where they trusted to just call me to help them, and that would lead to something else.
Do we, as church-going Christians, perhaps maybe spend a little too much time hanging out with believers, fellow believers? I mean, if we really believe that we should be sharing the good news about Christ, then it stands to reason that we should be making more of an effort to reach out to our community, maybe even volunteer?
Absolutely. You see, the thing is with church, and a lot of people have told me, I don't need the church. I've got the Bible and that's fine. No, I'm sorry. You do need the church. The Bible says very clearly, forget not the gathering of the saints, because that's where our encouragement comes from. That's where our support comes from. However, that's not the battlefield. The church is the place where you learn, where you get encouragement, where you get built up, so that when you do meet the others, and how can you evangelize if you're not meeting with people that aren't believers? Jesus went and met with the sinners. That's where he went. And we can't evangelize unless we have sinner friends with whom we have built a relationship, with whom we can communicate, and then the support of the church and the knowledge of the Bible goes with us as we communicate with them.
Let's talk about fellowship then, about building up other believers and helping to inspire them, especially if they want to go out and evangelize, because no man or woman is an island, right? You need that love and support.
You absolutely do. And I think that God gives us occasions when people say, well, I have no opportunities to talk to non-believers. Wow. God is giving us all kinds of opportunities. We just need to realize them. The other thing I think about is my motto has been, see where God is working and then go and join him. But that takes initiative, and we need to make a decision to do that. And so as we communicate with these people, I think an understanding of where they are coming from is also important. Do I know what they've gone through? Can I relate to the specifics in their life that have been difficult? My present wife and I, we both lost our spouses many years ago. Oh. And you know, it's interesting. When you go through that, it's amazing how people that know that will come and try and communicate with you because they want that encouragement, they want that fellowship, because they know you will understand.
So reaching out to non-believers as well, is it really important to be a sounding board for someone, especially if they're hurting or maybe did lose a loved one, like you just mentioned?
Absolutely. I think, and that's another thing with evangelism. The first thing we have to do is listen. I need to know where people are coming from. I need to understand why they're talking to me the way they are. And if I don't understand that, I'm going to respond in an incorrect way and maybe give them advice that they don't need. I know, for example, I've done a lot of funerals in my life. And one of the things I have experienced from a lot of the people that have talked to me, they've come with the idea, oh, I've had all these people quote scripture to me. I don't want to hear scripture. I want fellowship. I want company. I want somebody to sit with me. I always encourage people, when you are trying to help people like that, don't go and say, give me a call if you have a need. It never works. They're not going to call you. What you do is You go. That's all. You go and knock on the door and bring some food, or you go and you sit with them and cry with them. You just go, because they're going to not respond. And so I think it behooves us to make the move. And you know what? For somebody like me, who is an assertive personality, that's easier than for somebody who's very shy, very inverted and stuff like that. So I don't say it's easy. I just think these are things that we can all work at within how God has created us.
So, Abe, what would you list as maybe the top 3 do's and don'ts when it comes to evangelism?
Don't preach. They don't want to hear that. Listen very carefully. And thirdly, share your testimony, which is not a threat. Quoting Bible, and you'll get to that point. You need to. But we often say, well, all you have to do is live a life. That's very important, because you will be the only Bible they will ever read. But eventually, you're going to have to share the gospel with words as well. They go together.
Do you think tracts are still an effective tool for evangelism?
It depends on the area of the world. I know that in some areas of the world, I have heard people are still using tracts. Matter of fact, in some areas, you have these big evangelism meetings still happening. In North America, that's not happening very much anymore, but in other parts of the world, it is. And if it's an appropriate tract, I think it can be very effective. For example, they used to be called the Gideons. They're not that anymore. But I know that they have found new ways. They have a magazine now that they put out. Well, people see the magazine and they take it and they read it, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. But it's not a tract, it's a magazine. And I know that they put out the Gospel of John, and they've got around in our area, and they put them into places that will allow them to be placed. And they're free. And it's amazing how many people will walk into a store and see something that's free and they'll grab it. And I think these kinds of things are very important, to try and put places in place where people are comfortable taking it.
Let's talk about missions trips and evangelizing overseas. How important is that today in the 21st century?
Good question. It depends, I think, on how it's done. I think we have a lot of groups that go to different parts of the world, especially with young people, and they try and give them experiences and training in evangelism. I think that's an excellent way to do it. There's no better way than get your feet wet in certain areas and begin to share the gospel. I think that's very important. And so I think there are many areas in the world that are still very open to that. I'm not sure it's quite as effective in North America. We have become rather self-sufficient. We don't need God, and so I don't need you is the attitude. I can make it on my own, until they have a catastrophe or an accident or an illness or something. And then all of a sudden, they might sit and listen. So if we find out those things, we can be a part of that. And that's mission work at home, and that can be mission work abroad. And we have a lot of missionaries that are still going out there and meeting people who haven't heard the gospel or don't want to hear it.
You know what I find really interesting as well? When I was a kid, I'd always hear stories about a lot of North American pastors, preachers going out to different countries in Africa to evangelize. Now those African nations are actually sending missionaries back to North America to evangelize. Because like you said, many in North America, it's all about themselves and self-centeredness and taking the focus off of God. So that's very interesting right now.
Yeah, it is. I remember watching television. There's an ad that I hate when I watch television, and it's an ad advertising things for women, facial, et cetera, et cetera. And they always conclude with the comment, and you are worth it. And I'm thinking, that's the concept that we have in our world. We're worth it. So, serve me. It's me, myself, and I. And that's contrary to where the scripture wants us to go.
Yeah, you're worth it is an entirely different meaning when you talk about Jesus dying on the cross. We were definitely
Absolutely.
in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Retired Pastor Abe Block, thanks so much for the chat today about evangelism.
You are very welcome. It's a part of my life, and I enjoy it and love it. God bless.
Well, hey, are you looking to get out of the house and get some much needed exercise this coming winter? I know I am for sure. Cross-country skiing might just be what you're looking for. Joining me today is Greg Campbell from the Cyprus Nordic Ski Club to discuss how you can get yourself on some skis and out onto the snow. You're joining me from Medicine Hat, aren't you, Greg? Welcome to the show.
Yes. Thank you very much.
First of all, maybe provide us a little bit of an overview of what the Cyprus Nordic Ski Club is and what exactly you guys do.
Well, I think what happened was, and we've been here for 25 years or so, my wife and I, and it has the Cypress Hills so close to Medicine Hat. It's like 65 kilometers away, and it typically has snow and beautiful trees and trails and all of the above. And we just, a group of us, probably about 30 or so, saw and felt a need to have a club here, just to get combined interests. During COVID, we saw lots of cars parking out at the trailhead in Cypress Hills near Elkwater, and realized that there might be there's probably a need to get united, get some insurance, maybe improve on the track setting and the grooming out there, add some programming, and just find out really who would like to do some of this. And we've really got together. We started a club, Cyprus Nordic Ski Club, named it, got a logo, got some badges, some events, a board group of 8 committed volunteers, and this will be our first season really together.
Your first season. Okay. Well, you're right. It's a beautiful area, and obviously there was that need. So you're one of the originators of this club then.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I would. This Cal Lentz is the president, and he's got about 8 of us in our expertise, including accounting and communications with Sandra, that was going to be here, and Kwan Lee, who's into program and development and has worked so hard on the website, as well as Bill working on a website. So everyone seems to be picking up some slack, and now we just need the snow.
Yeah, I know. That's one thing we have been lacking so far. This, I guess, we're not even technically in winter yet, are we? We're still sitting at the edge of fall, but it's December and there's not a heck of a lot of snow out there. So you're right. So I hope that you have a great season coming up. But what kind of programs does this club offer for people who might be interested in getting into cross-country skiing? And how would you cater to different skill levels? Like myself, I've tried cross-country skiing a couple times, not as good, better at the downhill.
Yeah.
Cross-country skiing's hard.
It is, and yet it isn't. I mean, it is because it's physically maybe a little bit more demanding than downhill skiing. And yet, if you just take a couple lessons, and you get the good gear, and you can rent gear right out there in Elkwater, and then it seems to be, and if the grooming is right with the tracks set there, and we have quite a flat course. It's, in cross-country skiing, you go up, and on the flats and the downhills, you do it all, but it's not that extreme there. I would say most of the trails are just a green trail. So, but you can, I would dare to say that you just shuffle along, but that might be how it starts. And if you walk and then you start to glide a little bit, and you use the double pole technique when you can, and you control the speed going downhill.
It is so much harder than it looks, and it is such a great cardio workout too. It's unbelievable. But we were talking about the lack of snow. So how has this recent warm weather trend affected your operations and that overall cross-country skiing season? So far, it's kind of not even a season yet, is it?
I know. Yeah. Well, for sure, it's sad, and we had all this planning to get ready, and we have a course, and we have the Jackrabbit program, which I'll mention too, and that's a kind of a nationally recognized program. through Nordique, Alberta, which is our provincial governing body. And then we are going to have lessons every Saturday morning between 10 and 12 for bunny rabbits and jackrabbits. That's between, I think it's between 4 and 6 and 7 and 9. And yeah.
Maybe
and then,
I might have to join one of those, the bunny rabbit class.
Well, what we actually have for Learn to Ski program for adults as well. So yeah, so we have lots of stuff like that.
For anybody who is unfamiliar completely with the sport, how would you describe that experience compared to downhill skiing? Obviously, it is more challenging, although you wouldn't think it is.
Well,
a different kind of a challenge, right?
For sure. I mean, cardiovascular, it probably is a little bit more taxing. And they say it's the #1 sport in the world for your max VO2, your volume of oxygen to get to all the muscles. And that's exactly what it is, because you actually use your arms and your back and your legs and your core, everything. So then it's not just a leg burn. So that's why it's maybe a little bit more difficult. But to describe cross-country skiing, we actually call it free heeling sometimes, where your heels come off the ski. Yeah, and you get a little bit of a kick through. It used to be called a kick and glide, and the coaches that we have, the volunteer coaches for bunny rabbits and jackrabbits, are all certified, and we have insurance, and we're prepared to teach these kids to have fun, show them a little bit about some of the techniques. And then if that's okay after the first couple lessons, we think that they can go on any trail that they want there. I mean, supervised with their parents, we hope, and other adults, but yeah, lots to have fun with.
Right. Now, when I hear the word Nordique, I think of Europe. So where does the sport originate from, and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, well, it's originated in Scandinavia over the last 5,000 years. They've seen caves, pictographs of people skiing on these big, long wooden skis in Norway and Sweden. Yeah,
that's wild.
And I've been to Finland 5 or 6 times training myself in winter and in summer, and it's really a different culture there. One that kind of just embraces the cross-country skiing, not just the sport, but the other things, as in commuting. Lots of Finnish boys and girls actually commute on skis to school, and it's just a way that they design their suburbs and things like that. So, I mean, when in Rome, you do that stuff. So when you're in Scandinavia, that's what people do. They cross-country ski. It's really quite unique, and yeah, it's just a great sport. I know when I got into it, I thought, because I came from hockey and invasion sports like that, and volleyball and basketball. But once I started skiing, cross-country skiing, I didn't look back, because it was a great feeling.
Oh, that's amazing. And you're right. I think cross-country skiers are kind of a different breed of people, because I know my brother and sister-in-law are into it. And they brought their skis one time when we were having a snowstorm here. And it's like we couldn't get to the grocery store. And they're like, no problem. They literally skied to the store. I'm like, what are these people doing? So I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I can totally see that now. And so, Greg, I want to get into your background a little bit. How did you personally get involved in the sport? What motivated you to become, involved in all of it?
Well, it was actually in high school in the north part of Toronto. We actually had a cross-country ski team and running team. So, and I was on the basketball and the volleyball team, and just finished playing hockey at 16. And I thought, well, one of the friends said, just come on, give it a try. And really, I think it was just in my first practice or two, and we practiced every day after school. And we had a kind of a ravine valley close by, and we would go down and ski the trails. I loved it so much that after I got home, walked home, I ate supper, and I took my skis back to the valley, probably a couple kilometers away, and went skiing again at nighttime. And I just loved it so much. And I think I was really looking for something that got me a little bit maybe closer to nature, the exhilaration of training and working hard, probably the long distance aspect to it, to just let your troubles fade away, or it'd be kind of like a runner's high.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
I would imagine it's very similar to running because it's such a
Yeah.
solo sport. Too.
Yes.
I mean, it can be
Yes.
with other people,
Yeah.
but you can do that solo and just kind of get out
For
there
sure.
by yourself a little bit. And like you said, just kind of decompress from
Yes.
the world. I can totally see how that,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would be. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
How can people maybe become members of your Cyprus Nordic Ski Club? So what kind of opportunities are maybe available to participate?
Easy to join. We're using that Zone 4 website. So you find our, I guess our website, Cyprus Nordic Ski Club, just by looking it up, searching, and you'll see it. And it's quite detailed. Then you'd link on to the Zone 4, and the membership is $100 for a family of 4, or I think it's $70 per person. And that is almost all insurance that we pay to Nordic Alberta. And within the website, it'll show different avenues to find some of the Learn to Ski program, or the Jackrabbit, or other events like a Moonlight Ski. There was a roller ski event that Quan organized just a few weeks ago. And so there's lots of things on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you engage with the community to get people to kind of like discover the sport if they've never tried it before?
Yeah, can you help us?
That's what we're trying here.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you. We're really new at it. It's not really, and much like Lethbridge, I would imagine, it's not a real Nordic mecca here in Southern Alberta. And yet we are so close to the Cypress Hills, and usually they have really nice snow and, almost like a winter wonderland there. So I think over the pandemic, the last few years, I know when my wife and I and kids were going out there to ski, we would see many more cars there. So we were ready to go, what's happening here? So we have a few events. We have during Family Week, there's a special event day out in Elkwater. So we're going to offer some activities that day. We're offering the Bunny Rabbit and Jackrabbit. We hope to give some lessons throughout the winter. We would like to have an event. I know I would, almost like a Loppet, it's called. And it's kind of like a race, a citizen's race, where you just come out and you ski 7 kilometers or 14 or something like that. Yeah. And so we're hoping that way, and people hear about us. We also were at the ski swap a few weeks ago here in town, and we promoted the club. And it's probably going to take a little bit of clawing. And I just think the members of the new board and the club are so invested in this, because this has been a few times around that we've tried this in the last 25 years since I've been in. It just kind of comes and goes, and but I think it's got the right tipping point now to really get going.
Yeah, well, it is a popular sport for sure, definitely.
Yeah,
and it's a great way to get some exercise and get out in nature. I'm curious too, when you were training with the Olympics, how did you get involved in that side of it? Because you're combining cross country skiing with what is it, target shooting?
Yeah,
is it?
yeah,
which to me is like the strangest sport ever. And under what circumstance would you ever be doing this in real life? But I guess back in the day, right? Like you were saying before, back in war times, if you need to hunt or something.
Yeah, well, and that is the history. It was, they say, between the Swedish and Norwegian National Guards, I think in the late 1700s, they wanted to have some races, against each other, and they did that. And then that's when the sport just took off. So, and then in biathlon, I used to know, I think it was in 1928 was the first recorded biathlon race at the Olympics. And it has been going ever since, with quite a few changes, just like cross-country skiing. With the advent of fiberglass ski in the mid-70s, like techniques change. Now in biathlon and in skiing, they do skate skiing as well as classic, back and forth.
Wow.
You could go backcountry skiing and have wider skis and metal edges. So there's lots of different avenues. Cross-country skiing doesn't just have to be this one thing and just a shuffle along. There can be other things, including telemark skiing, which is a way to turn on using cross-country skis down the hill. Yeah.
Yes, because the skis are so long and they're so skinny. They
Yeah,
are harder
yeah.
it's harder to maneuver
For sure.
your body.
Yeah, yes.
Is there a trick to it? There must be.
Yeah, there is. It's a telemark turn, and it's a way that you put almost the way that the ski jumpers land when you see them land right after the 90-meter ski jump. They land with one foot in front of the other and kind of like a squat of sorts, and that's how they really extend and turn using this telemark turn.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. I'll be able
Okay.
to do it now.
Be careful.
I got it down now.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's way harder than it sounds a little bit complicated, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you have to, like all these things, you have to practice a little bit. But I think like the sport of pickleball, where people have success right away, they use the small rackets and you get out there and you can, hit the ball back and forth, and it's quite gentle, and people, I think it's the fastest growing sport for a reason, because people find success right away. And I think with cross-country skiing, you would too. If you're not bundled up too much with a big snowsuit, you're just dressed properly and, wearing the right gear and the toque and gloves and the right equipment, and, not with the heel coming off to the side too much, is just pretty good. And if the grooming is right, you just get right into the tracks and you can shuffle along to start with. And really in the last, I would say 5 or 10 years, these waxless skis are getting really popular. And when conditions change so much, like in southern Alberta, this is the perfect place for a waxless ski. And so, yeah, we're finding lots of success with it.
So many variables there, but very interesting conversation. Greg Campbell of the Cypress Nordic Ski Club. It looks like we're out of time, but thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you very much, Jeanette. Yeah, this has been excellent.
Absolutely. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.